So yeah, thanks everyone for coming out and the Hamilton Coalition for putting this on. This is part of the mini tour in Ontario for this latest book, Canada's Long Fight Against Democracy, which co-authored with Owen Schock. And one of the aims of the book is to answer that old joke of why has there never been a coup in Canada, because there's no Canadian embassy in Ottawa. So this book is not about Canada propping up authoritarian governments like selling weapons to the Saudi monarchy, which we did hear some discussion in the dominant media. This is about Canada's role in actively or passively subverting democracy. You want me to hold it? Yes, please. Okay. So yeah, it's about Canada actively or passively subverting democracy, and it's timely. Just last week we have Justin Trudeau attending this democracy summit and announcing Canada's commitment to democracy. So in the statement that Trudeau made, he said, quote, "Democracies around the world are facing threats, from foreign actors trying to influence election results to malicious cyber activity to disinformation. The Prime Minister reaffirmed Canada's unwavering commitment to protecting and strengthening democratic institutions at the Summit for Democracy." And then they announced $2.5 million to counter foreign interference. So the Trudeau government talks a lot about democracy, claims Canadian foreign policy is about democracy, advancement, etc. The unbelievable hypocrisy of the Trudeau government to make these claims. So we know, or anybody who bothered to pay attention should know, that in the fall of 2019, we supported the ouster of elected president of Bolivia, Evo Morales. Trudeau government supported that, right? And first ever indigenous elected president of a majority indigenous country. The Canadian government supported undermining the elections that Morales had actually won, and actually won by more than 10%, that made sure that he didn't need a second round runoff. But Canada has undercut this by through its diplomatic comments, through the organization American States, which claimed there was some problem with the tabulation that took place. And these claims, which were later shown to be completely absurd and disproven clearly, this gave momentum to protests. And then when the military stepped in and ousted Morales, Foreign Affairs Minister Chrystia Freeland said, quote, "Canada stands with Bolivia and the democratic will of its people. We note the resignation of President Morales and will continue to support Bolivia during this transition and the new elections." We then supported this interim president who had won less than 5% of the vote, this far-right, anti-indigenous leader, who was supposed to just be there for a short period, but did everything she could to avoid new elections. And we supported her throughout the whole year while there was repression. And finally, the protest movement became too strong, forced the hand of Áñez, the interim leader, to hold elections, and lo and behold, Morales' political party wins the presidency, wins most of the elected positions, and it becomes absolutely clear that this was an anti-democratic coup that we had supported. More recently, in Peru, Pedro Castillo was ousted, leftist president, and on the day he was ousted, the Canadian officials at the organization American States celebrated his ouster, said it was a step forward for democracy. And then immediately, Canada's ambassador in Lima, Marcotte, he goes out of his way to try to shore up this replacement usurper government. Multiple meetings, in like a 6-week period, he meets with more than 6 different ministers of this replacement government. You have Foreign Minister Joly, who calls the new foreign minister, replacement foreign minister, and she says, quote, "Spoke with Peru's Foreign Minister Ana Cecilia Gervasi to reiterate our support for the transitional government of President Boluarte. So that's Joly trying to shore up this unelected replacement government that continues to be in power. Most of the hemisphere didn't immediately recognize Boluarte, right? Canada was offside with most of the hemisphere. And we did this, and I should point out, we did this amidst massive repression. I mean, 60 people were killed, mostly indigenous people, protesting the coup, and we were working to shore up what was a very shaky replacement government at that time. Another example of the Trudeau government trying to subvert a legitimate government took place in Venezuela. I'm sure people in the room are familiar with Canada's role, at least at a general level, of trying to oust Nicolas Maduro. But this was a really aggressive campaign. Fortunately unsuccessful, but nonetheless a very aggressive campaign. Canada set up the Lima Group in 2017 of governments in the hemisphere opposed to Maduro. Canada took the Venezuelan president to the International Criminal Court. So while we're pressuring the ICC to not investigate Israeli war crimes, right? We're threatening our funding to the ICC so they don't investigate Israeli war crimes. We're saying that the Venezuelan officials are responsible for like massive human rights violations. The notion that the Venezuelan government is responsible for even 1% of the human rights violations of the Israeli government is absolutely ridiculous. So we take them to the ICC, which is designed to weaken, isolate the Maduro government. We fund opposition groups. We bring in sanctions, 4 rounds of sanctions against Venezuela. And then the Canadian government is right at the center, and actually spends months, according to the Canadian press, spent months working to unite Venezuela's opposition and the international community or other governments behind this notion that Juan Guaido, who was a totally unknown politician, who was in the 4th biggest party of Venezuela's opposition, right? The Voluntad Popular won the fourth most votes of the opposition parties. And we're right behind this whole project of just deciding that Juan Guaido is president. And then after this self-declaration takes place, you have Trudeau, he repeatedly calls Maduro a brutal dictator. He spends a significant amount of diplomatic energy trying to convince governments around the world to get behind Guaido. So when he's talking to the Japanese leader, the Spanish leader, he's always bringing up this whole Venezuela question. This took place all throughout 2019. So Canada spent significant energy, the Trudeau government spent significant energy to try to oust Venezuela's government. So this business about, we're all about democracy that we hear repeatedly from the Trudeau government is complete nonsense. Now, of course, this doesn't begin with the Trudeau government. Canadian governments over the years have long claimed that their foreign policy is about upholding democracy while they subvert democratic governments. And in the book, we detail, I think, about 10 different cases where we call Canada passively supporting mostly US-backed coups, US-led coups. So Mossadegh in Iran, Arbenz in Guatemala, many other examples of just sort of passive support for these anti-democratic efforts. But we also detail about a similar number of kind of more active cases, right, where Canada actually plays quite a significant role. So people in the room are probably familiar with Patrice Lumumba, right? He's the Congolese independence leader. Very well respected today. He basically wanted not just a political decolonization, but a genuine decolonization where Africans didn't just become or Congolese Africans didn't just become the leaders, political leaders, but the country actually took control of its natural resources, which was not at all Belgium's plan when they granted this decolonization. And so he's elected. The Belgians support a secessionist movement. Lumumba turns to the United Nations to defend the territorial integrity of Congo. The Americans want this UN mission not to defend the territorial integrity, but basically to undermine Lumumba. Canada leads up the UN mission, Canadians' top military commander, and they work very aggressively to undermine Lumumba. The UN, Canada channels its aid funding via the UN, even when the UN is pretty much working against Lumumba. When Lumumba gets dismissed by the president in a way that's unconstitutional, Canada supports that. The UN mission, when Lumumba turns to the Soviet bloc for support when he's being undermined, the Canadians, part of the UN mission, block that. They block him from getting a national radio address after he's been illegitimately ousted. And then he's put under house arrest. Now, Lumumba escapes house arrest. And it's the Canadian commander who tells Joseph Mobutu, the head of the military, where Lumumba is, gets a plane, puts Canadians on that plane, they go and recapture Lumumba, and not long after, he's assassinated, his body is dissolved in acid, there's apparently 1 or 2 teeth that exist afterwards. So after the US and Belgium, Canada was really right at the center in this effort to oust Lumumba. Another case that's well known is, of course, Salvador Allende in Chile, right? We just passed the 50th anniversary of Pinochet's coup that I'm sure most people in the room have some awareness of. Canada played a significant role in that ouster of elected Marxist president. So for instance, we cut off Export Development Canada credits, insurance, while there was an elected government. Now, immediately after Pinochet took office, we support the Inter-American Development Bank's funding. We supported cutting off IMF funding. Then afterwards, we support restarting that. So we were working to destabilize Allende, and that goes back actually even previously when Allende did well in the 1964 election, and then we tried to support the person who defeated him as a way to avoid Allende coming to power. We recognize Pinochet within 3 weeks. So, and then there's a huge amount of Canadian capital that comes in, Canadian mining companies. And probably most infamously, the Canadian ambassador in Santiago, Andrew Ross, says, while there's the Allende supporters are being detained in the football stadium, he says, quote, "Reprisals and searches have created panic atmosphere affecting particularly expatriates, including the riffraff of the Latin American left, to whom Allende gave asylum. The country has been on a prolonged political binge under the elected Allende government, and the junta has assumed the probably thankless task of sobering Chile up." So sobering Chile up, of course, was killing thousands of people and torturing tens of thousands and terrorizing many more. So that was the thinking in Ottawa vis-a-vis Pinochet Allende. So we supported that coup in a substantive way. Now, one of the things about these coups that Canada's been involved with is the indifference to the human effect, right? It's just like, oh, we can overthrow these governments, and maybe that leads to things collapsing, or maybe it leads to war, whatever, right? And right now, on at least 3 major international affairs issues, Canada's anti-democratic behavior contributed, in some cases fairly significantly, to the devastation that's making headlines today. Though, I should tell you, our media will never actually link Canada's role in these affairs. The clearest example of that is in Haiti, right? Now, the media is now talking, last couple of weeks, they're talking about Haiti again, huge security, insecurity problem. You have the leader who we appointed, who has been blocked from returning to the country, and most of Port-au-Prince is kind of like controlled by what are called gangs, young men with guns, and what was a difficult life for the vast majority of Haitians, who were very impoverished, has now become even more difficult with significant insecurity. And on the political front, there is no one that's elected in Haiti. There's no elected official in the country, right? So it's a breakdown of the state, the government structure, and to some extent just social affairs in general. There is a very strong connection between Canadian policy and Haiti. Most importantly, our role in ousting the elected government in 2004 and the situation today. So in 2004, in the early 2000s, there was the best elections in Haitian history, and 7,000 elected officials. So, and in one of the most impressive imperial propaganda feats of this century, Jean-Bertrand Aristide, the president that in the U.S. Marines on February 29th, 2004, take from his house, put him on a plane, dump him in the Central African Republic with Canadian Special Forces securing the airport. Aristide gets demonized and his government gets destabilized on the basis of an election that he neither was running in nor oversaw. So there's all this huge campaign against Aristide's undemocratic, based on an election, again, that he was not running in and that he didn't oversee. He was not in any position of authority at the time of the election. And so basically what happens is in May of 2000, there's elections for all the positions in the country except for president. And Famille Lavalas, the political party of Aristide, wins these elections like across the board, more than 70% of 7,000 elected positions. The opposition, of course, is not very happy about this, and even though the Organization of American States initially says these are solid elections, high participation, peaceful, etc., they then reverse course pretty quickly after it's clear that it's just a total rout by Famille Lavalas. And the opposition starts claiming there's a problem with how 8 senatorial positions are tabulated. Basically, to not have a runoff, they just count the top 4 candidates for that position of Senate, for the senatorial position, not all of the positions, even though according to the Constitution, technically they should have counted all of the people, all the votes, all the different people running. They just count the top 4. It would have had no effect on the overarching election because Famille Lavalas won by such a large majority, and the Famille Lavalas candidates almost certainly would have won a runoff. The opposition uses this, and the Canadian government plays a really important role in this through the Organization of American States, through its diplomatic comments, in basically claiming there's this breakdown of democracy in Haiti. And the opposition uses this to justify boycotting the presidential election, which was planned for November of that year. The Canadian U.S. government used this supposed electoral deficiency to cut off assistance that had already been agreed to by the World Bank to Haiti, which made up almost like half its budget, a huge amount of financial assistance. And at one point, the Aristide government starts paying interest on loans that Haiti had never actually even received. And so simultaneously, we cut off our bilateral assistance, the money that Canada, not all of it, but almost all of it, the money that Canada puts into Haiti starts going more and more to NGOs that are critical of the elected government, working to destabilize the elected government. There's this paramilitary campaign from the Dominican Republic, which the Haitian elite and the CIA are heavily involved with. And the Canadian government, Aristide's first international trip is to the Summit of the Americas in April of 2001, and Chrétien starts lecturing Aristide on the democratic deficiency. So we work to isolate him internationally. We promote this OAS mission, all part of trying to weaken Aristide. And then on January 31st of 2003, the Canadian government hosts the Ottawa Initiative on Haiti, where they bring together top officials from the US, the George Bush administration, from the French government, from the OAS, where they decide that Aristide must go, Haiti should be put under UN trusteeship, and the Haitian military should be recreated. 13 months later, the elected president has been forced out, Haiti's under UN trusteeship, and the Haitian military has been sort of recreated. And so this is, and Canada, like I said, Canadian troops actually invade Haiti to oust the government, and it's not just Aristide, it's all 7,000 elected officials. And then there's this coup government that we support while they kill thousands of people. We support diplomatically, we have Canadian troops on the ground for 6 months, et cetera, et cetera. Now, one of the things that comes out of the coup is something called the core group. How many people have heard of the core group? Okay, a handful of people. Okay, everyone in Haiti knows what the core group is. Okay, it's this little group where the ambassadors of the white countries get together and say, Haiti should do this, Haiti should do that. It's the body of the U.S., Canada, France, OAS, Brazil, European Union, and it's the core group that appointed the leader who has not been able to return 2 weeks ago, Ariel Henry. They appointed him nearly 3 years ago through a tweet. Literally, this is not an exaggeration. This has actually even been, the CBC has even reported on it, mentioned this. Ariel Henry was, after Jovenel Moïse was assassinated, there was a three-way power struggle, and the way the power struggle was dealt with was the core group put out a tweet, and then instantaneously everything fell behind Ariel Henry, and who's just has no constitutional legitimacy, no popularity, etc. And so the influence Canada has in Haiti and has had in Haiti since the 2004 coup is substantive. We hear about it almost never in our media. Like I said, most people in this room don't know what the core group is. I think if you went to Global Affairs Canada and you asked Global Affairs Canada officials, you probably have 2 or 3% who'd even ever heard of the core group. Yet in Haiti, everyone knows what the core group is because the core group has been largely running Haitian affairs for the past 20 years. And so the total breakdown in democracy and security in Haiti that we're seeing today is strongly connected with Canadian policy, some that I haven't mentioned, but importantly, the 2004 coup. Another example of the substantive human toll of Canada's anti-democratic behavior is in the Ukraine, okay? We helped overthrow an elected president in 2014, right? Just a little while ago, we just went past the anniversaries, right? There was a 2-year anniversary of Russia's invasion, tons of media attention. There was also the 10-year anniversary of the coup against Viktor Yanukovych, basically no media attention, very little media attention, and literally no attention about Canada's role in ousting Yanukovych. And the ouster of Yanukovych leads directly to Russia seizing Crimea, and it also leads to a civil war in the east, which becomes a kind of low-level NATO proxy war between NATO and or at least the Anglosphere elements of NATO and Russia. And then, of course, two and a bit years ago, Russia significantly expands that war. And I don't agree with what Russia's done. I think it's contrary to international law, but there is a context. Now, the 2014 coup, people often say that, well, Canada just supported the Maidan protests. There was this popular revolt against this corrupt leader, and Canada just supported those protests. Not true. Not true. Canada worked to destabilize Yanukovych from the get-go, even though large numbers of Canadian electoral observers observed the election, and they were almost invariably anti-Yanukovych, because Canada was against Yanukovych before he was elected, and yet they found that he was a legitimate election. And the reason Canada was against Yanukovych was pretty simple. He supported neutrality, right? He put in not joining NATO into the Constitution. And so Canada works. Harper in late 2010 goes to Ukraine. He does all kinds of things that are kind of provocative to undermine Yanukovych doing that. He brings all these members of the Ukrainian Canadian Congress, these sort of right-leaning so-called Ukrainian nationalists, including one that Royal Military College professor Ludimir Lukic, I believe is his name, who publishes a piece in the Kingston Whig Standard, the Kingston paper, afterwards, where he says that the real Ukrainian nationalist is Stephen Harper, not the elected president of Ukraine. Just to get a little sense of the kind of ideology they had. So Canada works to destabilize Yanukovych, and then when the Maidan protests get going in late 2013, you have the spokesperson for the Canadian Embassy is like a leading activist, the Maidan activist. Okay, that's not standard affairs. The spokesperson for a country's embassy is not also trying to overthrow the government in that country. You have John Baird, the foreign minister at the time, going to the Maidan Square in early December of 2013 and supporting the protesters. So Paul Grod, the head of the Ukrainian Canadian Congress, is on stage saying, Canada's foreign minister is giving his support to your effort to oppose Yanukovych. And then, taking it to a whole new level, you have the Canadian Embassy, which is close to Maidan Square, being a base of opposition to Yanukovych for more than a week in the final days of the protests, including the C14, a far-right organization, using the Canadian Embassy as part of its campaign to overthrow the president of the country. And then after the coup, we work really hard to consolidate it. John Baird trip, you have Harper make multiple trips to the country, aid funding, etc. And so the horrors that we're seeing, the violence, the war in the country is not disconnected from Canada's role in subverting a legitimate election in Ukraine. But you won't hear about this in our media, right? This is just kind of like ignored, even though there's been a real toll of our policy. Another example, maybe less significant, but nonetheless important to discuss, is with regards to the horrors, the Holocaust, really, that Israel's committing in Gaza. And so Canada, in its hostility to Palestinian democracy, after there was election in early 2006, that surprisingly, Hamas did very well, Canada immediately cuts off its funding. First country after Israel to cut off its funding to the Palestinians. Then when there's a Palestinian unity government, we work to bust up that Palestinian unity government. No, we isolate them diplomatically, won't have any diplomatic affairs, which with the intent of busting it up and sowing division. And then we start funding and training the Fatah-led security forces, and then you end up with some Palestinian civil war, and Hamas takes control of Gaza. Now, Israel uses that, of course, to deepen its siege, to justify ever more murderous assaults, 2009, 2012, 2014, 2021, and then, of course, what we're seeing now. Canada's hostility to Palestinian democracy enables Israel to isolate Gaza, to further demonize Hamas, and partly explains the absolute horrors we're seeing. Now, I can get into, if people want, many different ways in which Canada has enabled violence against Palestinians and Palestinian dispossession, but at the level of democracy, or narrowly defined here democracy, there's this real contribution that we detail in the book. So this book is obviously it's an effort to build critical consciousness around Canadian foreign policy, right? This is a broader aim of my writing, which is this attacking this notion of Canada as a benevolent international force, which is not based in fact. This myth is strong, and we need to challenge it. So it's designed, of course, to do that. It's also partly, one element in it is when talking about Canada's role in the coup in Haiti, always people would ask why. And there's many facets to explaining the why question, but one is that this is not an aberration. When the US works to destabilize and overthrow social democratic minded leaders, Canada usually supports that. Right? So this is a pattern, right? We shouldn't be like stunned that Canada helps overthrow Manuel Zelaya in Honduras in 2009. This is what they do. there's a pattern here. So that pattern, I think, is important for people to recognize and to grapple with and to inform how they see Canada's role in the world. Another part of that is this whole business of we're in these conflicts right now with China, with Russia, with Iran, and the media and the politicians say that we're in conflicts with these countries because we believe in democracy and they're authoritarian. Well, if you take a look at the record, you'll find that Canada has been involved in overthrowing many governments, so it's a little bit hard to take too seriously this notion that the main motivation is democracy versus authoritarianism, right? So that there's, I think, other elements, other factors that explain our hostility towards those countries. So the book is designed to kind of undercut some of that. Also, this whole business of foreign interference, right? Which is tons of talk about foreign interference. We have this inquiry, parliamentary inquiry. It's supposed to be our top concern, but we never talk about Canada's interference, right? I mean, literally, like the core group, right? This is like the Congolese ambassador, the Guatemalan ambassador, the Bangladesh ambassador, Jamaican ambassador. They get together every couple of weeks. They decide, okay, you know what? We think that there should no longer be national health care in Canada, this guy over here should be the prime minister. This is what the core group is doing in Haiti. Right? Imagine if that was happening in Canada. Like the claims of against China for foreign interference compared to the very well detailed Canadian interference in Haiti is just like it's a joke, right? So this is not an argument for foreign interference. I'm not saying we shouldn't be concerned about foreign interference. I think there's the U.S. and Israel have a lot more influence in Canada than China or Russia or Iran do, or even for that matter India. But I think that the UN Charter does